Hello, how you doing, and welcome back to the channel. So the last 16 in the Champions Cup is in the books. We have our quarter-final lineup. In this video, I'm going to be looking back at those last 16 games and in particular raising a few different questions. Number one, I'm going to be focusing on that La Rochelle Gloucester game and asking where has that performance been all season for Gloucester. Number two, I'm asking what teams do we realistically think amongst the quarter-final lineup could go on and win the competition? Because for me, it's still probably only 3 or 4 teams that I think can do that. And third one, perhaps the biggest of all actually, of all the talking points, is why on earth are we deciding knockout games of rugby by tries scored? This is after Exeter and Montpellier finished 33-all after extra time. Exeter go through because they scored more tries. To me, it makes no sense. So I'm going to be getting into that in this video. Any of the points I do come across, drop a comment down below to give me your view, or even if it's something else that I don't mention to do with these games, still whack it in the comments down below. Let's have a discussion about what you made of the Champions Cup and of the Champions Cup last 16. But all right, let's get into it. So as I say, I'm going to get into those kind of specific points in more detail, but I will run through the whole round of fixtures that we had. I'll whack it up on screen now, starting on the Friday night with Leicester beating Edinburgh 16-6. Then on the Saturday, we had the Sharks beating Munster, heaps of points in that game in Durban, 50-35. The Stormers got the job done against Harelquins, 32-28, a scoreline which actually flattered Harlequins in the end. They scored quite a few late tries. I think the Stormers look pretty good, actually. They're one of the teams that, for me, could potentially be in the mix to win the whole thing. You've got La Rochelle just beating Gloucester, 29-26. I'll definitely come back to that game. Leinster 30, Ulster 15, and then the 3 games on the Sunday, as I mentioned, Exeter Montpellier, the draw, but Exeter go through on tries scored, Saracens 35, Ospreys 20, and Toulouse 33, the Bulls 9. So as I mentioned in the intro, even if there's a game perhaps involving your team that I don't touch on fully, drop a comment down below to let me know what you think of them, because genuinely, even if I don't necessarily talk about them in the video, I love hearing the opinions of specifically the fans. You guys know your team better than anyone else. So let me know what you made of the performance and the result and all that sort of thing. I want to start on that La Rochelle Gloucester game because I saw Stephen Jones actually on the Rugby podcast, which is out today, said that he thought this was one of the great rounds in the Champions Cup ever, in the Heineken Cup ever, which I thought was high praise. I'm not sure I would quite go that far, but what I would say is La Rochelle 29, Gloucester 26 is and should be regarded, I think, as a classic. Certainly one of the classic games we've seen in the last few seasons. This was the defending champions, a French side, always brilliantly supported, great atmosphere, hosting an English side in Gloucester who have dropped like a stone in the Gallagher Premiership. Their push for the top 4 has massively wilted in recent weeks. They haven't been playing well at all. I didn't give them a hope in hell. Any of you that watched the preview video I did last week, I said with Gloucester, I couldn't see them getting anywhere near La Rochelle. How wrong I was, I hold my hands up there, but La Rochelle did ultimately get the victory, 29-26. I think the French side, well, they have to be better, don't they? They have to improve from that performance. I think it's Saracens they've got, isn't it, in the quarterfinal. Saracens is probably looking at that and thinking, oh, brilliant. Why did they have to get pushed so badly by Gloucester? Because I think there will be a response in that quarterfinal. But for Gloucester, surely the question marks for Gloucester fans is, where's that performance been? We talk about you missing out on the playoffs. I think it's incredibly unlikely now that you get top 4. You've been knocked out the Champions Cup, but you've put in a performance which shows that on your day you are as good as anyone. Where's that performance been? It's so frustrating now because the season's pretty much done really for Gloucester. They don't really have anything else to play for, do they, in terms of the Premiership? But they were absolutely brilliant. Freddie Clark as well, that try in the corner, that finish was utterly sensational. If Damien Penaud or, I don't know, Duhan van der Merwe, any of the best wingers in the world do that finish that Freddie Clark did for the try, where he's jumping in the air, dabbing it down one-handed, we're waxing lyrical about the quality of that finish. I think it was sensational from the Gloucester forward. So good on him. Good on Gloucester for their performance. But yeah, as I say, I would be massively frustrated as a Gloucester fan of where has that been? Where has that been when we've needed it in the Premiership? And that's a real disappointment, I think. On to the second point I raised in that intro. Who can win the competition, do you think? For me, there's some obvious answers here. The two obvious ones for me is Leinster, who pretty much cruised past Ulster. I know Ulster did their best to keep it tight and chip away at the score, but Leinster were always in command of that game, you felt really. They won 30 points to 15. Toulouse as well beat the Bulls really easily. I think I had some fans of the Bulls actually on the preview video I did in the comments saying, oh, they're giving the Bulls no chance against Toulouse. That's how it proved really in the end. Pretty comfortable victory. So those two I think are obvious. La Rochelle I would have said before the last 16. I still would include them there, but I do think, you know, Gloucester haven't been good and they were seriously troubled by the Cherry and Whites. So I don't know, are La Rochelle still there? I guess I'd still have them there. The other one for me is the Stormers, who we saw them do it in the URC last year, which was a competition everyone still expected Leinster to win, and the Stormers would just decide who were able to rise to the occasion. They bring that South African physicality. They've also got, you know, Mani Libok playing well, Willemse, who's a brilliant player as well. I think they've got threats there. I think they've got massive threats there, the Stormers. So they're probably the side that I would chuck in. I think they could potentially win it, which I actually think would be great for the competition. I know the jury's maybe still out on South African participation. I think because of the quality of their sides, then I think they can add something to it in a competition that struggled in the last few years. I think the travel is obviously an issue because you lose, you know, if your side, for example, is having to travel to South Africa all of a sudden this weekend, you know, you don't have any time to plan for that trip. If you were to, it's a lot more expensive than getting the Eurostar over to Paris or whatever it might be. So there are issues there, but overall, I'm still a fan, I think, of the South African teams being part of the competition. But let me get on to the final point that I raised in the intro. Exeter Chiefs 33, Montpellier 33. For me, it is utterly ridiculous that you are having a knockout rugby match decided by tries scored. This is the equivalent, in my opinion, of England winning the one-day Cricket World Cup on boundaries, where it was level after the Super Over with New Zealand and England had scored more boundaries, so they got the victory. Even though we all grow up knowing that cricket is about scoring more runs than your opponents. Rugby is about scoring more points than your opponents. And a really important part of the game is the different ways that you can build a score with penalties, conversions and tries, obviously. And for me, it's just ridiculous. There was a game last year in England in the Premiership Cup, in fact, where Worcester won the final after extra time with the scores level because they'd scored more tries in the game. And whilst I appreciate the importance of tries and that we want to see attacking rugby, when it comes to knockout games and teams actually being knocked out of competitions because of that, to me, it doesn't seem right to me. I would much prefer either continue to play extra time, and if you want to say, okay, that's not great for player welfare, then let's have a kicking competition or something. I would prefer some discernible way, some reasonable way to separate the teams rather than just saying, well, you scored more tries in the game, you can go through. I think it is ludicrous, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. As I say, I do think it's very, very unfair. If I was Montpellier, I would be sitting there thinking, this is ridiculous. But maybe I'm outraged more than anyone else is on this one. So as I say, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think of that. That's kind of everything in terms of the Champions Cup. I'll do a video probably towards the end of the week, maybe on Thursday, something like that, where I will look ahead to the quarter-final lineup. This is my look back on the last 16. Comment down below, as I've said already, and also subscribe to the channel and like the video. And as always, I will see you in the next one.